Okay, this is it, the big picture-perfect Mac Daddy watering video that I've been promising you guys for a couple of weeks now. This is going to have a ton of tidbits, so stop what you're doing, be sure to get a pen and paper and popcorn, whatever you need to be able to concentrate and stick with me through this, because I'm going to be hitting you with facts from point A all the way to point B at the very end. So get ready, because I promise you, if you watch this all the way through and implement any of the little tidbits that I give along the way into your lawn practices at home, you will see improvement in your fescue this summer. So keep in mind, the information that I'm going to be giving here is geared toward fescue lawns, specifically turf type tall fescue, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be a useless video to anybody who has warm season grass or is in a completely different climate from our transition zone here in Virginia. Take it with a grain of salt. Pay attention, if you don't have a fescue lawn around here, to the tips on calibrating and measuring the coverage of your irrigation system. There's still stuff here for you, but if you are a turf type tall fescue owner, this is going to be, from front to back, the video that you need to watch. So let me start with my everyone is special disclaimer. Your lawn is different from my lawn, which is different from the lawn here at our shop. It's just like with people. If I go to the doctor, he's going to tell me that I need to eat a different amount and drink a different amount than he's going to tell you, and you're going to have your own vitamins. Everybody's different. And that's the case with our fertilizer program. Everyone's lawn is customized based on our soil sample report, but it's still true as well with watering habits. So first thing first, let's talk about irrigation systems. There are kind of two main ways that I like to categorize systems to make sure that everybody's on the same page. An in-ground irrigation system is what the majority of our clients have in at least some part of their lawn. This can be installed at any time, but it's usually put into the yard when the home is built, because it's just kind of a turnkey service that a lot of people opt for before they have sod or anything installed. This is the preferable option because it usually gives you better coverage and requires less of your time as a homeowner, but it's very expensive up front, and it usually requires a third party to maintain it at least a couple of times a year, to blow it out and winterize it, and then to turn it back on. The alternative is going to be an above ground irrigation system, which is composed of those sprinklers that we all ran through as kids, whether it's the fan or the kind. It doesn't really matter. It's that above ground hose that you hook up to your spigot and have to move around. It takes a lot more involvement. The good thing is, it's a lot less expensive up front, so you don't have nearly that thousands of dollars overhead if you're trying to get something started on an older home or one that just didn't have it installed when the first homeowner moved in. So if you haven't yet nailed down an irrigation system, or if you're kind of on the fence of whether or not to invest in an underground irrigation system, here are my pros and cons. In-ground system works better, easier for you as a homeowner. Downside, costs a lot more. Above ground system, kind of the reverse. Costs a ton less, but it can be a pain in the butt and doesn't necessarily give you as good of coverage as an in-ground system is going to. Now let's talk about fescue. As you remember from our video last week that talked about how the heat affects your fescue, fescue is a cool season grass, which means that summer is the hardest time for it. As soon as those temperatures get above the mid-70s, fescue starts to struggle a little bit. It gets thirsty, it gets dry, it gets puny and wilty, it turns kind of this weird purplish color before it goes brown. It's just not a good situation. The key to success with almost every turf, but especially fescue in this sense, is root development. In ideal growing conditions, fescue can develop a root system that is 2 to 3 feet deep, but almost no homeowners end up seeing this because it is very, very difficult in our area to drive water that deep, and as a result pull those roots, because those roots are going to chase that water. As soon as daytime temperatures get into the 80s and higher, fescue needs about 1 to 1.5 inches of water per week. This is an important thing. Pay attention. I hope you're still listening. 1 to 1.5 inches of water per week. Now this is where things can start to get a little complicated and unique to each situation, so let's break down all of the specifics where that is concerned. You cannot run your irrigation system blind to the weather. That's not going to do your lawn any favors, and it's going to either A, give it too little, or B, give it too much. There is rarely, if ever, a scenario in which you can run your irrigation system on the exact same schedule throughout the year and get the same amount of water on the lawn, because that rainfall is going to change each week. In Virginia, from May through September, we get anywhere between 3.5 to 4.5 inches of rain per month on average. And as you guys know from 2018, that can vary wildly. 5 years ago, we had a major drought in which we weren't even able to water at all. And then last year, we had record-breaking 1 in 100 years levels of rain where we got over 5 feet of saturation over the course of the year. So that average rainfall for Richmond is very much so an average. You want to take it with a grain of salt, and you want to check your weather forecast to find out exactly how much rain you're expected to get each day in your area. Let's pretend that I run my irrigation system on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. The forecast as of this weekend is calling for 1/2 inch of rain on Wednesday and no rain for the rest of the week. As a result, there's no point in me watering on Wednesday. We all kind of chuckle as professionals in the industry when we're driving through a neighborhood and see somebody's irrigation system running while it is actively raining outside. This is poor planning, it's a waste of water, and it's a waste of your money. Even worse, it can lead to fungus in your fescue. If fescue stays wet and it doesn't have an opportunity to dry off, it can breed diseases like brown patch that can decimate your lawn. This is why it is very important not to just blindly stick to your irrigation system and walk away from it once it's set. You want to monitor on a week-to-week basis exactly how much water you actually need to put down and fine-tune it a little bit, either turn it off for a day or shift it back a couple of days to make sure that you're getting the proper amount of coverage. Now, let's return to that scenario and say we're gonna get 1.5 to 2 inches of rain on Wednesday. This doesn't mean that that 1.5 inch goal for the week has been met and you can turn it off for the rest of the week. Most of that rain, because we're going to get such heavy driving rains, is going to run off. So not all of it is seeping into the ground, and as a result, your fescue isn't actually getting 1.5 to 2 inches of water. It's going to be lucky if it's getting 1/2 inch to a full inch, depending on how heavily it rains. This is why when heavy rains are in the forecast, they are almost always paired with a flood watch or a flood warning. Because it's raining faster than the ground can soak all of that rain in, all that runoff is going to be going downhill into rivers and streams, which means that it's not going into your lawn. And I hate to say it, but this is one of those scenarios where it's not an exact science. The only real way that you can keep up with your lawn and make sure that it's getting the correct amount of precipitation and irrigation is to just watch it. Walk the yard once every few days and find out based on your observations if it looks dry or if it's too wet. There are 2 ways that you can tell whether or not your lawn is at the proper amount of saturation. The first is just by looking at it. You can tell when you look across the lawn, and I know you guys have seen it in the last week, and it almost has that purplish bluish tint to it. It's hard to describe, you can kind of see it in this picture up here, but that's a sign of heat stress. If the fescue is left in this condition for too long, it'll go from that purplish color to a pure brown color. So that's a dead giveaway. If this visual isn't obvious, simply walking around your lawn 9 times out of 10 is going to give you a good idea. You want the ground to feel firm under your feet, but you don't want your grass to sound crunchy. At the same time, you don't want it to be muddy either. And this can be different in different parts of your lawn based on the grading and everything else. Remember, every lawn is unique, so you want to be comfortable in understanding how your lawn's conditions affect how it's handling any water that's being put down. Another way that we really like to explain how to tell whether or not your soil is at its ideal saturation is with the screwdriver test. This is very simple, and if you have kids, this can be a fun way to get them involved in the yard for just a few minutes if nothing else. Let me show you what that looks like. When checking your lawn with a screwdriver, you want to be able to press the screwdriver up to the handle into the lawn without too much resistance. If you have to wiggle it around a lot or pound it in, or if you can't get it in at all, the yard is too dry and you have to do something to turn up that water. Okay, so let's take a moment to recap. So far, we've talked about in-ground versus above-ground irrigation, the basics of fescue's relationship with heat and water, how rainfall can and should affect the way that you run your irrigation system, and simple ways to actively monitor the amount of saturation present in your soil. So now that we have those basics covered, I want to talk with you about time. The biggest question that I get asked by clients and potential new clients alike is, how long should I run my irrigation system? This is not a question that I can answer. Here we are coming back to that disclaimer from the beginning of this video, because everyone's system is just as different as their lawn is. This is impacted by water pressure, the distance that your sprinkler heads are throwing the water, how long it takes for them to rotate, how close your heads are together, and several other factors. I can tell you how much water to put down. Remember, how much is it? It's 1 inch to 1.5 inches of water a week when you consider average rainfall, but it's up to you to determine how long it takes for your system to reach that amount. Before we get into that, let me pause so I can tell you about when to water. Most years, it's a good idea to get your irrigation system up and running in May. However, there are plenty of years when it needs to be turned on as early as April, or it needs to wait until June. There are even some years where some people don't have to water at all. It just depends, but roughly we say get it turned on before Mother's Day. For this year, 2019, it should be on by now. Last week we had temperatures in the 90s, so we need to be getting some water on that fescue. The rain that we had over the weekend has helped, but it has a good chance of drying out again between now and next weekend. Do not, listen to me, do not turn your irrigation system off until at least a month after your fall seeding service has been performed. In a few months, I'm gonna make a whole other video about how to water your seed, because it is different from how you water your adult grass, but you have to water your seed. It is so important to its successful germination. It has to stay damp. So you really do not want to winterize your irrigation system until at least the end of October, possibly November. Not being hateful toward my irrigation guys, but a lot of companies will call their clients about winterizing their systems as early as August or September. This is because they're really busy, and that's a great thing to be for a business, but don't buy into it. You don't need to winterize your irrigation system until soil temperatures are getting close to freezing. An even more important when than when to start and when to stop is when during the day to run your irrigation system. Morning! The answer is morning! Do not let me catch you running your irrigation system in the evening or at night. And I'm not just trying to be mean, there's a really good reason. Think about the analogy that our company's founder, Jimmy, has told hundreds of people at this point. We've all done this, so don't pretend like you don't, but remember the time when you washed a load of laundry and forgot to move it to the dryer for a day or two. As soon as you open that washer lid up, you are hit with the smell of mildew. It stinks, you have to rewash your clothes. At least they're clean, but they don't smell like it. Your lawn is the same way. If you run your irrigation system in the evening or at night, your fescue does not have an opportunity to get dry from that water for hours and hours until the next day. This retained moisture that sits on the blade of grass is the key cause of brown patch and other fungal issues. Your risk of fungus increases exponentially if you do not have a good timing to your watering system. The best time to run your irrigation system is early in the wee small hours of the morning. Depending on the time of year, this usually sits somewhere between 5 and 7 o'clock, give or take an hour. This is early enough that you're not going to lose any water to evaporation from the the summer sun, but it's late enough that within a few hours that sun will be up and it will be drying off those blades of grass. So we know when to start and stop, and we know what time of day to put that water down, right? After sending out this video to all of our clients, I don't want to hear anybody telling me that they are watering at night. I will find you and we will fight. That is the worst thing that you can do to your lawn, and if it gets fungus, it is your fault. Don't do it. Water in the morning. Be smart. So let's talk about how to figure out how long to run your irrigation system. Again, I am not ragging on my irrigation guys, but they're not always going to know how long you need to run it, and they're just going to kind of give you a generic recommendation based on what they see on average. This method of measurement is applicable to both in-ground and above-ground irrigation systems, so everybody's pretty universal in the way to measure this. In-ground irrigation systems naturally come in a zone format. Almost every property that has irrigation systems, unless it is teeny tiny, is going to have multiple zones. For above-ground irrigation systems, you kind of have to create your own zones based on the layout and size of your property. This is something you just have to play around with, but more often than not, especially if you kind of have a square or rectangular layout to the area that you're going to be watering, I recommend getting one of those fan sprinklers, because a nicer version of that will let you adjust the width of the fan as well as the height of it so that it throws farther and farther depending on the area that you need covered. Once you have your layout set, collect multiple little tuna cans, pie pans, anything that's relatively shallow but able to collect water and isn't bowled out, so that your base level is going to be uniform with that 90-degree tilt from the sides. Place several of these containers in each of your zones at different points. If you are concerned that some parts of your yard aren't getting as good of coverage as other parts, place your containers more heavily in these areas so that you can get a read on exactly what you want to nail down. Once you get these set out, run your system for whatever duration of time you had planned. In-ground irrigation systems are going to have a control box somewhere in the garage, the basement, maybe the crawl space, somewhere in the house. Everybody's different. Most of these systems are pretty user-friendly with very detailed and straightforward instructions on the inside of the control box, but each one is different. So there's a lot of resources online, YouTube videos or websites that break down and help you figure out how to turn on each zone and set timers for exactly the days, times, and duration of times that you want them to come on. Timer boxes are also available for above ground irrigation systems, and you can get these with multiple outlets so that if you're creating more than one zone for your irrigation system that you're setting up with your own sprinklers and hoses, you can have them rotating and cycling the same way so that you don't lose water pressure. Once you run your irrigation system, go back out and measure exactly how much water collected in each spot. A good basic starting point for running your system will be putting down about 1/3 to 1/2 inches of water every other day. So run it on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, whatever you have to do just to kind of get that average spread out throughout the week. You don't want to put down 1/4 of an inch 6 days a week, because that daily watering reduces your lawn's ability to get dry. And if you remember from our sit down about the risks of evening watering, that's a bad plan. Don't do that. Give the lawn time to breathe and get dry between your watering episodes. So as you can see here in Brandon and I's lawn, our collection of cups gathered about the same amount of water in each zone. If you run your system for a uniform amount of time and you find that either one zone or one section of one zone has way more or way less water than the others, you know something is wrong, and you can hone in and try to figure out A, if it's a problem with your system that needs to be repaired, or B, if it's just some weird fluke and it's not collecting as much water and you need to change the amount of time that that zone runs. This is a good practice to perform at least once or twice a year, because there can be things that change or break within your system. So this is where some math might come into play. Let's say that you run your irrigation system in every zone for 20 minutes, and zones 1, 2, and 3 collect 1/3 of an inch of water within that 20-minute span, but zone 4 only collects 1/4 of an inch of water within that 20-minute span. This tells you that zone 4, assuming that there isn't anything broken, will be better suited to run for 30 minutes to get the same amount of water as zones 1, 2, and 3. If we're running our system long enough to achieve 1/3 of an inch of water, then we're going to get an inch of water per week if we run it 3 days a week. This is a great plan if we're having relatively mild temperatures, or if we're getting some amount of rainfall each week on top of what you're watering. If we're going for at least a week or two without any rainfall, or if we're getting in temperatures in the mid to high 90s, you definitely want to turn it up and run everything for 30 to 45 minutes to get that 1.5 inches of water instead of the typical 1 inch. Again, this isn't an exact science. Every yard is different and every system is different. So you just have to keep an eye on the forecast and on the quality of your lawn and soil on a week-to-week basis to make sure that you're fine-tuning it to maximize on those results. My whole goal in giving you guys this information is so that you can water smarter, not harder. It's going to be better for your lawn and it's going to be better for your wallet. That's a win-win situation for everybody involved. Now, we just talked about the scenario in which it takes 20 to 30 minutes per zone to get 1/3 of an inch of water. Wake up! Pay attention, this is very valuable for you to know. A key to success to make your lawn gorgeous and to drive those roots as deep as they can go is to water deep. And this is best done through zone rotation. So what does that mean? Instead of running zone 1 for 20 straight minutes, and then zone 2 for 20 straight minutes, zone 3 for 20 straight minutes, and zone 4 for its special 30 minutes, you want to break that in half. So zone 1 for 10 minutes, zone 2 for 10 minutes, zone 3 for 10 minutes, and zone 4 for 15 minutes. Then we're gonna come back and we're gonna water zone 1 for 10 minutes, zone 2 for 10 minutes, zone 3 for 10 minutes, and zone 4 for 15 minutes. This is giving you the same duration of watering, the same amount of water being put down, but that first wave is given the opportunity to soak in more deeply before the second wave comes through. I promise you this makes a massive difference in terms of the quality of your lawn. It really does work in making those roots as deep as they can go and reducing any water that you would be losing otherwise to run off. The clients that we have doing this are some of our best looking properties, and it's the only difference between them and the other clients that we're taking care of. Okay, so we're almost done. I'm really proud of you guys for hanging in this long, and I hope that so far this has been beneficial to you. Remember, I know a lot of our viewers aren't subscribers yet, which I don't understand, so be sure to subscribe so you can stay up to date with our company and the advice that we have to share openly, and ring the bell so that you're getting notifications about those videos. So to recap again, we've talked about what time of year to begin watering and when to stop and turn your system off for the winter. We've talked about how important it is to water early in the morning. We discussed how to measure the amount of water being put down by your system in a certain amount of time. And we talked about the secret of zone rotation. Now, I want to take a second to talk to you guys about rain gauges and how they are a small investment that you can make that makes a big difference and makes it a lot easier for you to know exactly how much rainfall your unique lawn is getting on a day-to-day basis. More and more in-ground irrigation systems are coming with a rain gauge that you can set outside, and it's like this smart feature where it takes that data and uses it to automatically adjust your irrigation timing. We've seen a lot of cases where this doesn't work as well as you want it to, and that might just be because it's not a perfect system yet, but it also has a lot to do with human error. You don't want to just set your rain gauge out on the edge of your deck or anything, because there's a good chance that it's not going to get direct rainfall. You want your rain gauge to be somewhere within your lawn, especially if you have an area that's been a little bit more tricky. Personally, I still like the good old-fashioned, old-school rain gauge that you just stick out in the yard, let it collect the rainfall. When you come home, you can see that you got 1/4 of an inch of rain, you pour it out, start over, adjust your system if you need to. But it's whatever works for you. It's just a helpful tool to give you a little bit more hands-on information about how much rain your lawn got that day. And now here's the question that I also get a lot of the time and that you might be wondering as well. What if I just don't water? It seems like a lot to worry about. It seems like a big expense either to get the system set up or just to put out that much water. It's not in my budget. It's not on my priorities. Am I still gonna have a good looking lawn? You can. A lawn that isn't watered by an irrigation system can still be a picture-perfect lawn. It's just going to have more variation based on the rainfall and temperatures that we experience season to season. A year like 2018, where we got record-breaking rains, most lawns, except for a couple of weeks, were gorgeous without any watering at all, and that's because they were getting most of their water needs from that rainfall. However, on the other end, if we go through a period of drought, lawns are very likely to shut down, go dormant, brown out, because they're not getting any rain, so you're probably not going to have a great looking lawn during the summer. But if you do get a rain, it'll bounce back and be good to go. So long as you understand that you're going to see more ups and downs in the quality and appearance of the lawn based on that forecast, it's not ideal, but it is okay if it's not a good plan for you to run your irrigation system. But there are two catches there, and I want you to pay attention to this. If you've chosen not to run your irrigation system, it is better to not run it at all than to run it poorly. Go big or go home when it comes to watering your lawn. If you water irregularly or incorrectly, it's kind of a tease for your grass. It says, oh hey, I'm getting watered, and it brings its roots up and it's anticipating that, and then if all of a sudden you shut down and you don't water it anymore, it gets let down and it's more susceptible to heat stress and browning out. If you don't have the ability to water correctly, just leave it alone and let it do its natural thing. The second catch, and we talked about this earlier in the video, you really do need to water at aeration seed time. I get it, trust me, no judgment here if you decide not to water during the summer and you understand the pros and cons of that, but you really will benefit from watering in the fall for about a month after that seed goes down. And like I said, this doesn't require quite as much watering. You just run your system enough for that seed to get damp several times a day for 3 to 4 weeks, and it's good to go. Every situation is just a matter of what's best for you and for your lawn, so feel free to talk to me about what that best plan might be. So I think that covers it. I think we talked about everything that I need you guys to know this summer about watering and how to make sure your fescue lawn stays successful. Like I said, I appreciate your attention. I know that it's not the most exciting topic for everybody, but it is something that we hear a ton of questions about. So be sure to implement any of these practices and comment below or send me an email or a text message or a phone call if you have any specific questions about how this translates to your unique lawn. These tips and tricks are going to make a difference for a lot of lawns. I can feel it. I'm really excited, and I hope that everybody has a picture-perfect day. We'll be back with you soon for more information on the care given to your lawn for the rest of this spring and into the summer. So stay tuned, and of course, be sure to subscribe. Thanks, you guys. Take care.